Right, part 3. As long as the nascent institutions are constructed and maintained only in the interaction of A and B, their objectivity remains tenuous or weak, easily changeable, almost playful, even while they attain a measure of objectivity by the mere fact of their formation. To put this a little differently, the routinized background of A's and B's activity remains fairly accessible to deliberate intervention by A and B, in theory. Although the routines once established carry within them a tendency to persist, the possibility of changing them or even abolishing them remains at hand in consciousness. And I want to say in consciousness, yes, but it's very difficult often to put into practice. A and B alone are responsible for having constructed this world. And I add, but very quickly, this world begins to construct them. A and B remain capable of changing or abolishing it, and yet so very often they can't. What is more, since they themselves have shaped this world in the course of a shared biography which they can remember, the world thus shaped appears fully transparent to them. They understand the world that they themselves have made. Possibly. All this changes in the process of transmission to the new generation. The objectivity of the institutional world thickens and hardens, becomes more objective, not only for the children, but by mirror effect for the parents as well. There we go again, now becomes, this is how these things are done. A world so regarded attains a firmness in consciousness. It becomes real in an ever more massive way, and it can no longer be changed so readily, so easily. For the children, especially in the early phase of their socialization into it, it becomes the world. For the parents, it loses its playful quality and becomes serious. For the children, the parentally transmitted world is not fully transparent. Since they had no part in shaping it, it confronts them as a given reality that, like nature, is opaque in places at least. Only at this point does it become possible to speak of a social world at all, a social world at all, with all the physicality that implies, in the sense of a comprehensive and given reality, confronting the individual in a manner analogous to the reality of the natural world, which is to say, it's so very difficult to change. Only in this way, as an objective world, can the social formations be transmitted to a new generation. In the early phases of socialization, the child is quite incapable of distinguishing between the objectivity of natural phenomena and the objectivity of social formations or social phenomena. To take the most important item of socialization, language appears to the child as inherent in the nature of things, and he cannot grasp the notion of its conventionality. A thing is what it is called, and it could not be called anything else. They're talking about monolingual children. All institutions appear in the same way, as given, unalterable, and self-evident. Even in our empirically unlikely example of parents having constructed an institutional world de novo from nothing, the objectivity of this world would be increased for them by the socialization of their children, because the objectivity experienced by the children would reflect back upon their own experience of this world. This is the mirror effect they were talking about just a page ago. Empirically, observably, of course, the institutional world transmitted by most parents already has the character of historical and objective reality. The process of transmission simply strengthens the parent's sense of reality, if only because, to put it crudely, if one says, "This is how things are done," often enough one believes it oneself. An institutional world, then, is experienced as an objective reality. It has a history that antedates the individual's birth, and it is not accessible to his biographical recollection. It was there before he or she was born, and it will be there after his death. This history itself, as the tradition of the existing institutions, has the character of objectivity. The individual's biography is apprehended or understood or grasped as an episode located within the objective history of the society. The institutions, as historical and objective facticities or constructions, confront the individual as undeniable facts. The institutions are there, external to him, persistent in their reality, whether he or she likes it or not. She or he cannot wish them away, He can wish they weren't there, but not wish them away. They resist attempts to change or evade them. They keep on going, usually. They have coercive power over him and her, both in themselves, by the sheer force of their facticity, and through the control mechanisms that are usually attached to the most important of them. The objective reality of institutions is not diminished if the individual does not understand their purpose or their mode of operation. He may experience large sectors of the social world as incomprehensible, perhaps oppressive in their opaqueness, but they are real nonetheless. Since institutions exist as external reality, the individual cannot understand them by introspection. He must go out and learn about them, just as he must learn about nature. This remains true even though the social world, as humanly produced reality, is potentially understandable in a way not possible in the case of the natural world. And I just want to add that since humans are part of the natural world, understanding them isn't necessarily very easy, is perhaps impossible, which means the social world, understanding it, is quite difficult. I'm very bit optimistic about social science's ability to understand the social world. It is important to keep in mind that the objectivity of the institutional world, however massive it may appear to the individual, is a humanly produced, constructed objectivity. Humans have made it. The process by which the externalized products of human activity attain the character of objectivity is called objectivation. The institutional world is objectivated human activity, and so is every single institution. In other words, despite the objectivity that marks the social world in human experience, it does not thereby acquire an ontological or given or natural status apart from the human activity that produced it. It requires constant human production and reproduction. The paradox that humanity, is capable of producing a world that he then experiences as something other than a human product will concern us later. At the moment, it is important to emphasize that the relationship between man, or humanity, the producer, and the social world, the product, is and remains a dialectical one. That is, man, not of course in isolation but in collectivities, and his social world interact with each other. The product, the social world, acts back on the producer, the human. Externalization and objectivation are moments in a continuing dialectical process. The third moment in this process is internalization, by which the objectivated social world is retrojected into consciousness in the course of socialization. Right? We internalize the external world and thereby reproduce it. It will occupy us in detail later on. It is already possible, however, to see the fundamental relationship of these three dialectical moments in social reality. Each of them corresponds to an essential characterization of the social world. Society is a human product. Society is an objective reality. Man is a social product, humanity. It may also already be evident that an analysis of the social world that leaves out any one of these three moments will be distortive, will be incorrect. One may further add, will be partial. One may further add that only with the transmission of the social world to a new generation, that is, internalization is effectuated in socialization, only with this does the fundamental social dialectic appear in its totality. To repeat, only with the appearance of a new generation can one probably speak of a social world. And that's the end of the third